Hello and welcome to the class everyone. We are going to talk about the future time and its expressions in English today. English uses various ways to express the future time, and the most explicit marker or the most commonly used marker of future time reference in English is the modal auxiliary verb will. It is important to understand the nuances of the verb will in English because, as mentioned, this is a modal auxiliary verb, and modal auxiliary verbs in English can have more than one meanings. In our case, we use will as a tense forming auxiliary or a verb that can indicate future time reference when it gives a sense of prediction. We will look at a few sentences to understand what we mean by sense of prediction. The first one we have here is, the train will arrive in 5 minutes. I will cook pasta in the evening. It will be cold in Delhi at this time of year. What will he do if they don't come for the meeting? In all these sentences, you would see that the verb will, the auxiliary modal verb will, is used to indicate a sense of prediction. The first sentence, will arrive in 5 minutes. This is certainly a reference to the future time for the arrival of the train. The second sentence, I will cook pasta in the evening, again a very explicit reference to someone performing the action later in the evening, right? Again indicates a future time reference. In the third one, it will be cold in Delhi at this time of year. This again expresses a future time reference. This is a prediction that is made based on your knowledge of climate in that part of the country, in that geography at that point of time. So this is also something that indicates or it gives you a sense of prediction about the climate of the place. So again, because there's a sense of prediction involved, you can say that this is a future time reference. The modal verb will is used here to form the tense auxiliary. And in the last one, what will he do if they don't come for the meeting? This is an interrogative sentence, this is a question sentence, and the verb will used here, the auxiliary verb will, again indicates towards the person's future actions, okay, an action which is a reaction to something, but certainly something that would happen in the future. So in all the four sentences you see here, your will is a tense forming auxiliary because it gives you a sense of prediction. It gives you, it acts as an indicator of future prediction in all the four cases here. When you talk about future tense, one other aspect becomes very, very important, and that is the use of time adverbials. Certain sentences along with the future tense marker will also uses time adverbials to make the time reference clearer, to make it more explicit to the listener or the reader. And some of the examples of such adverbials are tomorrow, okay, or next, followed by a week or a day. So say next Monday, next Tuesday, or a date, okay, the next 23rd or next March, anything that is a month, and or next year, okay. Any of this can become a part of the time adverbial that is used along with future tense. Sometimes it can also be prepositional phrases like in the evening, in the morning, in the afternoon, right? All of these function as time adverbials that can be associated with the future tense forming auxiliary will in order to make the future time reference clearer, to make it more explicit, right? We have a few examples here to understand this. The first one, I will be 28 in March. Okay, so in March is a clear indication. This time adverbial gives you a very clear indication of future time reference. I am talking about something that has to happen at a later time and in the future time. Second one, I am on the bus and I'll reach Indore by 4. The third one, we look at that too in order to understand time adverbials better. They will board the plane in the morning. So they will board the plane, and what is the time adverbial use? This is a prepositional case in this sentence, and that is in the morning, right? So again, it tells you that it is something that has to happen in the future. course, right? So time adverbials, they have very important functions with respect to the future time references. They help you to make the future time references more explicit. We will now look at the structure of simple future tense. So in the first sentence we have, I will visit the mall at the weekend. And let's see how we form the simple future tense in English. So as discussed, you have the modal auxiliary verb, tense forming auxiliary verb will here, followed by your verb. So will visit, right? So this is the form of simple future tense in English, will followed by the verb. Look at the other sentences also to understand this. It will rain in the month of June. So you have will as your tense forming auxiliary, right? Then you have the verb rain to give you the simple future tense. Similarly, in the last sentence, you see you have they will not come for the lunch tonight. So your subject here is plural. In the other two cases, it was singular, right? So this one was first person singular and the second sentence had it, which is third person singular. The third one, you have a plural subject, third person plural. But what do you see? You see that there is no change in the form of the simple future tense here, right? So it is still will come. We have added a word not here. This indicates what you call as negation in the language. So that does not change the structure of the sentence in any way, doesn't change the time reference also. It just negates the idea, that's it. But besides that, you see that there is no structural change in how you form simple future tense in English. It is still the tense forming auxiliary will plus the verb which follows it, right? Whether your subject is singular or plural. So this is the structure of simple future tense in English. We'll now discuss the perfect aspect in future tense. So perfect aspect is used usually to talk about relational time, right? So it relates one time to the other. In the simple forms, the time reference is usually absolute in nature. It does not refer to anything else. It does not bring in any other time in between. It just refers the absolute time period that we are talking about. But in case of the perfect aspect, the time is always relational in nature. So it talks about one time in relation to the other. So in the case of future perfect tense, what you see is that the representation is of the past time within the future, which means the past is embedded within the future, or what you can refer to as the previous future, right? So if I am to look at it in the form of, in a diagrammatic way, I will look at event 1 and event 2. So now because we are talking about embedding, so let's call this part as event 1. Okay, so what is this? This is event 1 and the outer box that I have drawn, let's call it event 2, right? So if the inner one is event 1 and the outer one is event 2, then event 1 is the one that is embedded, right? So this is what is called as the embedded time, okay? And this may be referred to as the previous future time, and event 2 is the future time, right? So in some sense, this is, we are referring to a previous event within a given event, right? And if I am to draw a timeline of this event, so you have the present here, you have the past here, and you have the future here. So event 2 is somewhere here, right? And event 1 is here. This is your event 1 in sense of the, if you talk with respect to the timeline, then event 1 is something that happens before event 2. But remember, both these events are happening in the future tense. This is the previous future event, something that is set within the future time, something which is set in the past time within the future time period, right? So this is how the timeline will look. Let's look at the example we have here. So this is, she will have done the work, so the project will be completed. So this part is your event 1, right? So this is something that is embedded within your future. Which is the future one here? The project will be completed, right? Project will be completed becomes your future event, and within that future event, the past of that future is will have done the work, which is your event 1. So this is your event 1 and this is your event 2. This is how you form future perfect tense in English, right? Keep in mind that this is a relational tense. This relates one time with the other, and whenever we are talking about the perfect aspect, we are referring to an embedded time period. In this case, that is the future perfect tense, you're talking about past event within the future. Let's look at the structure of future perfect tense. So how to form future perfect tense sentences in English. The first sentence you have here is, she will have completed her work by then, right? And what do you have here? To form a future perfect tense here, you definitely have your tense forming auxiliary, which is your will, right? So that is the first part here, followed by the verb have. This is again an auxiliary verb. So in this construction, you certainly require this particular auxiliary, which is have, followed by your main verb, which is complete in this sense, in this case. And what is the form of the verb? The main verb is used in its participle form, right, which is commonly referred to as the V3 form of the verb, right. So participle form, ed. The ed you see here is not the simple past tense, it is the past participle form, the participle form of the verb complete. So auxiliary, tense forming auxiliary will, followed by the auxiliary have, followed by the main verb in its participle form. So this is how you form the future perfect tense in English. Look at the other two sentences. She will not have completed her work. This is a negative sentence. So there is no change to the structure of the sentence except for the fact that you have added the negation marker not here. Okay, but besides that there is no change. It is still will have completed. Look at it closely. You have the tense forming auxiliary will, followed by the auxiliary have, followed by your main verb complete in its participle form, right? The last sentence, you have a plural subject here, we will have spent most of the money by then. And what do you see here? Although you have changed the number of your subject. In the first two cases, you had she, which was like a singular subject. In this case, you changed it to the plural subject, right? This is first person, plural form. But you see that there is no much of a change with respect to the structure of the future perfect tense, right? This is still will, have and the V3 form of the verb spend. So no change. No matter what the number of your subject is, there is no change to the structure of the future perfect tense form in English. Okay. Next, we will discuss the progressive aspect in future tense. And progressive aspect, like in all the other tense forms, the function of the progressive aspect form is to indicate that an action is in, the action is ongoing, the action is in progress, right? The same thing is with the future progressive tense form. It indicates that a future action will be in progress. So, however, it can help you form sentences, it can help you talk about sentences which gives you slightly different meanings. Remember, they're still set in the future and they talk about an action that continues or is in progress in the future time, but with slight details and differences of meaning. Let's look at how they function and let's see what kind of meanings you can generate using the progressive aspect in future tense. The first one, they will be having lunch around 12 p.m. So don't call them now. Here you have will be having lunch. Okay, so will be having forms your future progressive aspect, right? The future progressive tense form here. And what do you see here? This is the indication, the meaning that is generated, the meaning that is conveyed through the sentence is of certainly future time, but what kind of future time? Timetabled future time. Will be having lunch around 12 p.m. Okay, looks like a timetable for somebody. The second one you have here is I'll be traveling by bus until the bike is fixed. So again you have will be traveling. Okay, I'll, the verb will here is in the contracted form. Okay, so I apostrophe LL stands for will be traveling by bus until the bike is fixed. So what is this? This is again something that refers to a future action in progress, but the meaning generated here is of a future routine, right? The previous one was the timetabled future, the second one is a future routine, right? I'll be traveling by bus until the bike is fixed, right? The third one here, I'll be taking my day off on Saturdays. This again is in the progressive future tense, will be taking. And what do you see here? This is an indication of a future habit, right? So you have three different meanings that can be conveyed using the future progressive aspect. The first one is of a timetabled future, okay? It's all future tense, but you add a little more detail to this future time reference. And in the first case, it is that of a timetabled future. The second one is of a future routine, and the third one is of future habit, right? Let's look at the structure of the progressive future. She will be taking the train to work from now on, okay? So again, you have the tense forming auxiliary will here, followed by the verb be. This is important. In this form of the tense, progressive future form, you have the auxiliary, the verb be following the auxiliary verb will, okay? In the previous case, you saw that it was have, the auxiliary verb have. In this case, the auxiliary, tense forming auxiliary verb will is followed by be, followed by your main verb in the progressive form, that is ing. So the ing that you see here is the one which is responsible for adding the progressive aspect to the main verb, right? So will, be, taking. Tense forming auxiliary will followed by be, followed by the main verb with its ing marker indicating the progressive form, okay? Second sentence, will not be taking. Again, the structure remains the same. The only thing that you have added to this one, the thing that is additional here is the negation marker not, but that does not affect the basic form of the future progressive tense here, right? So will not be taking, still it is will followed by be, followed by the main verb in its along with its progressive form marker, right? The last one is an interrogative sentence. Will she be taking the train to work? Again, in case of the interrogative sentence, you see that the auxiliary and the subject is inversed, okay? The subject verb, the subject verb inversion, subject auxiliary inversion takes place in an interrogative sentence. Besides that, again, there is nothing more that you see with respect to the change in structure. We will now talk about a form of future tense in English which is a bit contentious. Some people would say that this is not a real form of tense, that there is no real use for this. This is a debate, but it is possible for us to have sentences constructed in this particular form. It is true that not all verbs may be used in the future perfect progressive form. All verbs may not be capable of providing a meaningful context when used in the future perfect progressive form. However, it does not mean that it is not possible at all. It certainly gives a few meanings which adds to the time reference in future tense, and we'll look at what those meanings are. So to begin with, the future perfect progressive, it is formed by the combination of the future perfect tense along with the progressive aspect. So you put together the perfect and the progressive aspect in the future time to form the future perfect progressive tense form. In terms of time, obviously, it refers to the previous future within the future, like we discussed for the perfect form. Along with it, you also add the progressive aspect in order to say that this particular action has been in progress. Okay, so the previous future within the future has been in progress at that point of time. This could be the meaning that it can generate. Let's look at the detailed version of what it could mean. So the first one you have here is a previous future state that will remain in a current future state. Okay, so let's look at the example to understand this sentence or this point in a clearer way. So you have, I will have been living in Chennai for over 10 years. What we know is that this is certainly a previous future event, right? I will have been living, and a future previous future event that would be in progress for some time. Right? So a future state that will remain a current future state. Second one, future ongoing action will still be occurring. Future ongoing action. So what is this action? This action will occur in the future. It will be an ongoing action in the future and it will still be occurring. in the future time. Okay, do not forget the fact that we are talking about something that has to happen in the future. So this is an action that has to be in progress in the future time. Okay. So see, I will have been performing in the theatre group for over a year. Will have been performing, right? Will have been performing in the theatre group for over a year. So this has not yet happened. It will happen in the future, and in the future when it happens, it is going to be a previous future event which will continue for a period of time. Another meaning, a future series of events will go on. So there's a series of events which is in future and it would go on. What is the example? She will have been visiting him for years by then. Will have been visiting. What is the future series of events? That she will be visiting, okay, and it will go on. The future series of event is the act of visiting, and that particular act in the future will go on. She will have been visiting him for years by then. Okay, so there is again no sense of indication of something coming to a conclusion or the verb itself ending. It still gives you a progressive sense in the future. And what kind of future action? A previous future action. So that together, all of this meaning together makes it the future perfect progressive form. Okay. Let's look at the last example you have here. A future long lasting action, okay, will continue. Long lasting action in the sentence here, I will have been sitting here for all time of the day. So what is your long lasting action here? Sitting, right? And how will it be happening? It will continue, right? So a future long lasting action which continues or which will continue, because we are talking about the future time. Long lasting action here is that of, somebody have been sitting for a long time. So have been sitting is what forms your long lasting action in the future, and this particular action that happens in the future will continue is what generates your future perfect progressive form, right? Will have been sitting here for all time of the day. In all the sentences that we discussed here, the time reference is still in the future. There is no question of doubt there, but we are adding details to it in order to understand the nuances, the very small details of that particular time. So like you see now, it is slightly difficult to process this particular time reference, this detail, using all the verb. You cannot use all the verbs to form this tense, right? This particular tense form. Only certain kind of verbs can go well with the future perfect tense form, the future perfect progressive forms. Okay. We look at the future perfect progressive forms structure. So the first sentence you have here is, she will have been performing in the group for years by then, the one that we discussed before. So you see here that again the sentence has your will auxiliary, the tense forming auxiliary, followed by the auxiliary verb have, followed by the V3 form, the participle form of the verb be, which is followed by the main verb, in this case perform, and along with that you have the ing marker, which is the marker for the suffix ing, which is the marker for the progressive form. So together all of this is going to give you your future perfect progressive form, right? Grammatically you encode the future perfect progressive form using the will auxiliary, which indicates the tense, followed by your auxiliary verb have, followed by the V3 or the participle form of the verb be, which comes with, followed by the main verb, which comes with the ing suffix indicating the progressive aspect. Okay. Let's look at the second sentence also to understand this. She will not have been working there for so long. So like in the previous cases, the only addition you have here is of the negation marker, which does not affect your structure, right? So you still have will have been working, right? Tense auxiliary, auxiliary verb have, V3 or the participle form of the verb be, main verb with the suffix ing showing the progressive aspect, right? The last sentence, will they have been doing that work? This is again your interrogative sentence. So what you see here, there is no much change with respect to what goes in to the making of future perfect progressive form using in an interrogative sentence. The only difference that you see here is that the subject and the auxiliary verb has been inverted, right? Because this is a sentence, this is a interrogative sentence. So that's the only change you see here with respect to the structure. Otherwise, when you talk about the future perfect tense, progressive tense form, we do not see any change, right? So this is all about the future time reference, the various forms of expressing the future time in English and the meanings that these forms can generate. One needs to be very careful with how we use these forms and in what meaning we use them. Sometimes the form that you use can be same, however, the meaning generated for the same form can be different, like we saw in the case of the progressive aspect marker and the future perfect progressive marker, the future perfect progressive forms too. So the form remains the same, however, the meaning that can be produced could be slightly different from each other. So keep this in mind while you are working with the tense forms. That is, so this is all for today's class, and thank you so much, and I will meet you again in a new lesson.